I would say what makes my family a distinctly Richmond family is because of our rich history within the Virginia Union University community, but also within the Baptist church community here in Richmond. All three of my mom's brothers are pastors here in Richmond. Michael Shannon, Wilson Shannon, and Charles Shannon. My great uncle, so this is my grandfather's brother, was the president at Virginia Union from 1979 to maybe 85, 86. And so as a result of that, we spent a lot of time in churches in the West End neighborhood of Richmond. So between 5th Baptist and 2nd Baptist, but also a lot of time on the campus of Virginia Union. My name is Melody Short. I'm 43 years old and I'm from Richmond, Virginia. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia's West End community, specifically in Randolph Village. That was my neighborhood, which is near VCU now. Growing up in Randolph Village was a lot of fun. You know, it was filled with a lot of families, black families. And it was, to me, it was like the top of the world because there were a lot of kids that I went to school with that lived in the neighborhood, and so we were able to go to school together by day, but also hang out in the community in the evenings and on the weekends, always in each other's homes, sleepovers. You know, nowadays we don't borrow things from our neighbors, but we would borrow butter, father would borrow cigarettes, you know, we would share crafts, just all the things, just everything that you envision a community to be. You know, we would be outside when the sprinklers would come on during the summertime, and we would run through the sprinklers and we would be all itchy rolling through the grass. And then we would have to be home when the lights came on the light post in the neighborhood. So in my opinion, it was just like a typical upbringing in a neighborhood filled with people that looked like me, talked like me, you know, ate the things that we ate, and it just felt like family. Growing up and having the feeling of family extend beyond our household was just a reflection of other folks that were similar age as my parents, but they also had children that were my age, that were the ages of either myself or my brother at the time. And we went to school together. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, but we weren't poor by no means. It was working class black folks, right? And so, you know, they were raised by black folks that relied on community heavily to survive. And so I think it was just an extension of that. And I almost feel like it probably ended at that generation, to be honest. So in our neighborhood, we had a few multi-generational families. I think about my friend Brandy, and she grew up in a house of women. And it was she and her cousin, who's also a woman, and her mother, and her cousin's mom, and her grandmother, and her auntie. So it was like a house full of women. So we had that experience, and we would always go there, hang out on the porch. You would always feel safe because it's a house full of women. So they're constantly cooking and doing all the things. But then we also had women in the neighborhood that provided, they didn't have childcare businesses, but like they will keep your kid when your parents got off work. I remember my mom had a really good girlfriend back in the day named Gloria. And so my mom, she didn't do hair. That's not her ministry. And neither is it mine. It's not mine either. And so my mom would send us to, if she wasn't sending me to one of my aunt's homes, my dad's sister, she would send me to Gloria's house to get my hair done. And that was right in Randolph Village. I mean, and it was just, you know, Gloria had to work, her daughter Keisha, Jimmy, they would be at our home. It was just a thing. You take care of the kids. People didn't have money for like child care services. I mean, child care is provided by your neighbors. My family name is Shannon, and I am able to trace back my lineage to 1852, particularly to Amanda Bolden McLeod Shannon. My amazing family on the Shannon side has been quite diligent with having family reunions as far back as I could remember. very intentional about that and moving the family reunions from the Carolinas, even as far north as Jersey, I believe, at some point. Particularly, they take place mostly between Richmond, Maryland, D.C., and even sometimes Atlanta. But they have done such an incredible job documenting the history of the family. And this is Uncle David, who was for a long time, I have considered him a patriarch of our family because Papa had passed away.
Yeah, he had passed away.
So he was.
In 1985, yes. And he was still here. You're right.
Uncle David, and he was here until 2008 because he was right before Nia's birth. So this was at Virginia Union.
Right. He was the president.
Which is quite pivotal in our family history at the university. I would say what makes my family a distinctly Richmond family is because of our rich history within the Virginia Union University community, but also within the Baptist church community here in Richmond. All three of my mom's brothers are pastors here in Richmond. Michael Shannon, Wilson Shannon, and Charles Shannon. My great uncle, so this is my grandfather's brother, was the president at Virginia Union from 1979 to maybe 85, 86. And so as a result of that, we spent a lot of time in churches in the West End neighborhood of Richmond. So between 5th Baptist and 2nd Baptist, but also a lot of time on the campus of Virginia Union, since my uncle was the president there for a period of time. And as a result, as you can imagine, education was right up under God. You got education and community. Those three things were incredibly prioritized in our family and instilled heavily in us as younger folk that we need to make sure we center each of the three in our lives. I am the daughter of Joanne Elizabeth Shannon Short and Melvin Conrad Short Sr. We were at church Sunday. We were at church on Wednesdays for Bible study. We were at church on Fridays for choir rehearsal. We were at church on Saturdays if it was a fundraiser. We were at church Monday through Friday during the summer for summer camp. That practice in that way is not current for me in terms of going to a physical location, but I'm very clear as a result of my upbringing who is the ruler of my life, which is God without a doubt. And then education. I was telling my daughter and telling my sister, we grew up knowing that after high school is college. It's not like, oh, what happens after high school? It's like, no, what happens after college? So that was just like a requirement, continue education. You want to make sure you are learning all the time because you're always going to be a student. But just positioning yourself as a Black person in this world to be able to get as much information and knowledge as possible, because that would be critical, in you navigating in this world. So, and then I would say the other piece is just like community, to whom much is given, much is required. And that was something that we saw in action. And so I never thought that I would do service work as an adult. In fact, my parents, they met at Richmond's Parks and Recreation. My father, even present day, works for Recreation and Parks here in Richmond. We weren't at church, we were at the rec center, right? Because there was no paying for summer camp. And whatever the sport was for the season is what we were doing for the year. And so at the time, I would think primarily around my father, oh my gosh, he would bring children to our home. I'm like, are we it sounds crazy, but is this an orphan? Like, what is happening here? Like, why do we have so many kids coming? But now as an adult, I understand the opportunity to show children another side of town, but also just allowing them to be in wide open spaces, green spaces. That's so important for like your growth and development as a youth. I do the work of supporting entrepreneurs, particularly Black entrepreneurs. And so, I attribute that to both, my father and mother working in Parks and Rec, but also my mom being an educator and instilling in me the importance of giving back. You have the knowledge, you have the information, you do have the responsibility of sharing so that someone else can also advance their lives.
Four of us, your three uncles and Al are graduates of Virginia Union University.
And Uncle David was president from 79 until when?
1985.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I remember My memory at that is very minimal at that age, but I do remember one of our family reunions on campus. We were
Oh yeah, we was at
the
I was going to
president's
say
house.
we were at the president's house. He invited us. Yes, he was about family, man.
Yeah, that was cool.
Is this him? What is he? What is he
This
doing?
is he, Uncle David, and this is my youngest brother.
So this is while he was president at Union, and it just so happened that my mom's youngest brother was getting his degree from Union. So that what an honor, right, to be the president of the university, your father's brother, your uncle, to hand you your degree. I attended college in Baltimore, Maryland. I am a graduate of Morgan State University's Earl Graves School of Business, which is quite interesting because the large majority of my family attended Virginia Union University. That's legacy for us. But I think about how my cousins and we completely ditched that. We were like, we're not going to Union. We have been on this campus so many times as kids. And we all actually, when I think about it, we all left town. But yeah, I went to school in Baltimore. Motherhood brought me back to Richmond. And so I was living in Baltimore, working in DC. Had my daughter, Nia Abiose Saunders, and intended to just stay in that area. And then the reality of motherhood hits, and you realize, you need your family. And I wanted my family, but I definitely needed them. My mom came up to Baltimore. We packed up the house, and 14 years ago, Thanksgiving weekend, and I am still here. Returning back to Richmond was intended to be just for a short period of time. And so I actually kept my job in DC. So for the first 4 years, I commuted 5 days a week back and forth to DC from Richmond because I was convinced that this is temporary. We were just sleeping here in Richmond. We will return back to Maryland, DC, or even consider moving back to New York because that was home for me once upon a time. I just wanted to feel some of the things that I'd experienced living in other cities, in Brooklyn, in DC, of course, in Baltimore. These cities, in my opinion, were rich in culture, just had options that Richmond did not have. But when I returned to Richmond, the arts movement was starting to shift. In that shifting, I was like, I want to make sure I have some of the same experiences that I've had living in larger cities here in Richmond. The element that was missing was a lot of representation in terms of Black artists. And so my business partner and I decided to do something about it. As a child, I was a member of Shalom Baptist Fellowship Church, which is in Southside Richmond. It's right up the hill from Hillside Court, right at the top of the hill. My uncle, Wilson Shannon, was our pastor. And my mom was director of Christian education. She was our Sunday school teacher. We were in the church heavy, okay? Between my uncle and my mom, my brother and sister and I always joke that my mom is Jesus' first child. My mom literally embodies that. She leads her life just clear that it's important to have this faith walk and to trust and lean on God. At my age, it's a journey. The journey is still happening, right? Just being reminded of that upbringing and being reminded of the importance of leaning on God and the importance of faith and not saying it, but living your life in such a way that you know that God is the provider. You know that God is going to, protect and take care of you. But knowing and feeling that in my heart. So actually my mom recently gave me just some ways in which I can kind of up the ante in my faith walk so that I can be closer to just the spirituality of it all. So just kind of calming your body, getting quiet, getting still so that you can hear what God is trying to tell you. When I think about the Shannon family, I would say that we are God-fearing, Christ-centered, prioritizing education and the advancement of Black people. That's really, really big. I remember my Uncle David, who was president of Virginia Union, moved his family to Georgia. I remember when the family took a trip to Stone Mountain, baby, and Uncle David made it clear on what we would do, what we would not do, and just reminding us, never sugarcoating our history and the importance of us making sure we remain educated beyond college and standing firm in our faith and our brilliance as Black folk, and just being aware so that we can be armed with what's necessary to navigate successfully as Black people in America. Black excellence, like just a proud people, you know, like proud Black folks. And I think that we were able to do that because we knew where we came from. We knew whose we were and whose we are. And you know, the possibilities in living in this life for us, we were charged to do so in a way that was limitless. I have 2 siblings. I'm actually the oldest. And so my brother is Melvin Short Jr. And then I have a younger sister, Ashley Brianna Short. I'm the oldest, and so I spent very little time in the household with my sister. In fact, she was born when I was in 11th grade. So we had a little less than 2 years together, living under the same roof because I was off to college in the fall. And so I think for a large majority of her life, I kind of served as almost like a second mom. And probably in her eyes, a cool mom. My mom is, this is no shade to my mother, but she is a mother. My mom didn't raise us like, I'm not your friend. If we become friends, that's fine, but I know what I've been charged with, and it's to raise you. And raise some productive, God-fearing kids that grow up to be adults that, you know how to navigate this world. But my sister and I are very close. In fact, I feel like the roles are reversed. I think that she is now my protector. She does not play games when it comes to her big sister at all. And then I have my brother, Melvin, who, interestingly enough, growing up, he would drive me crazy. And I would say to him that he was adopted. Because I just thought he was so different from us. And so I was just like, what is wrong with you? Why are you this way? But we're very close now, thank God. But, you know, he was a young Black boy navigating this world and trying to find his way. And so he has been successful in doing so. So, Nia, who are these folks?
Yeah, she should recognize them.
This is Uncle Charles. This is Uncle Wilson. And this is Uncle Michael.
That's right.
And this was when Uncle Micah was the in charge of the Boys Club, right on the corner.
In West End?
Yes, they are from when we was living in the Raindrop Village. That Boys Club, he was the director one time.
Michael J.
He grew up through that Boys Club, and then he later on became director of the Boys Club.
This is wonderful. And so this is my mom and her siblings.
Yeah.
Which is really good. I like that picture. That's a classic picture. And then this is my mom when she graduated from
when I went back.
Union.
They graduated in 1996.
And this is Nia's graduation. So these are graduation pictures of my mother's grandchildren. Nia, and my nephew Cameron.
And then that's Melvin Jr. You recognize him?
That's my brother when he graduated from high school.
With Grandma Doris.
Grandma Doris. This is wonderful, Mom. Legacy means to me leaving something of value behind and intentionally doing so to benefit my daughter, Nia, and my nephew, Cameron, so that they don't have to start from scratch. I believe in my heart deeply that entrepreneurship for Black folks is a path to freedom, one of a few paths to freedom. And so my hope is that the work that I do in the community of supporting small businesses, my role in the space of economic development, somewhere, somehow a seed has been planted for them as they share space with me. I take them to small businesses in and around town. They have the opportunity to meet the business owners, that seed is planted so that they know that this is a way that they can provide for themselves and their family and the generations to come. I really want to leave a legacy of being self-reliant. And so I think that we as Black folks, with God's help, we have what we need to be able to provide for ourselves and our community. And that is what I hope my work has helped people to do. And I am hopeful that the same applies to my daughter, my nephew, and the community at large. I want future generations to know about my family, that they were deeply committed to the advancement of Black people and using both education and spirituality as a tool to advance ourselves within this Richmond region. Just really heavily invested through their time spent in and out of the churches, in and out of the school systems, both public school and at the collegiate level. And it was just a family that truly loved Richmond. In fact, you know, we still continue to have family reunions here in Richmond to serve as a reminder of our deep roots here, our contributions to this city, but also, you know, so that the young folks in the family could be aware of the history, and the hope is to inspire them to continue the legacy of doing the same work.